Alhamdulillah, sir.
Shabab, are you doing well?
Yes, Alhamdulillah, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm doing absolutely fine. It's good to see you all in time. In fact, you are 1 minute ahead of time, and that is really wonderful to see. So, did you guys get a chance to test the codes that we talked about in the last class? I think we were talking about something about the agenda, right? So, we were seeing a template of the agenda. So, we're trying to implement that on the HTML. So, did you guys try it out?
Uh, yes, there was
Yes,
some
sir.
order list and some unordered lists. I tried that
Yes.
part, sir.
Excellent. So, did it work?
Yes, sir, but the term AB and human, I didn't do that. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So we're going to be starting from that, and we're going to be learning a lot in today's class. So you can brace yourself. But before I start, I have some announcement, and I want to highlight one thing, and that is, what you will have to do for this course is that you will actually have to select one particular text editor, which you find most comfortable with. And I wouldn't recommend the standard notepad that comes with Windows because it does not really have a lot of features. I would recommend text editors such as, for example, I'm using Sublime, and you can either use Atom or you can use VS Code or you can use some other text editor that supports this
Brackets.
kind of. Yes, which one?
Brackets.
Brackets.
Yes.
Okay, brackets is also one of them. So I have tried some of them, and I saw that Sublime was it was probably the most lightweight. That's why I stick to that. But what I would request you to do is I would request you to choose a text editor that supports two things. First, it should support syntax highlighting, which is supported by a lot of text editors. For example, you can also use Notepad++. And there's one other thing that we're going to be needing, and that is we should be able to open a directory. And we should be able to open a directory and be able to access all the files that are in the folders. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be having multiple files in a directory, and we're going to be going back and forth between the files. So you should choose a notepad editor that would allow you to do that. Right? So for example, we are working on one file and suddenly we want to go to another file and modify and come back to that file. So if there is a file structure on the left side or the right side, that would actually make your life a bit easier. And one other important thing about the notepad is that you should actually select this program by today's class, because we're going to be doing a lot of practices in the class, and I don't really want you to waste a lot of time during the sitting working on the notepads, because I want you to feel at home with the program that you start working with. So talking about that, I did not really get a chance to talk about the mark distribution in the last class. So and there has been a notice, and for the theory class it is the same, but there is one minor change, and that is we are going to have 5 cities instead of 4, and we're going to be counting best 3 out of 5. So let me show you the schedule of how I think it should be taken. Give me one moment. Can you guys access the Google Drive folder?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just give me 1 moment. I'm going to be sharing first the course outline and where I am changing the schedules. Just a minute. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Let me share the mark distribution first. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Okay.
So it's similar to the other theory courses. So we're going to have a typical mark distribution where we are highlighting and we're focusing more on the class tests. And what we're going to be doing is that instead of 4, we're going to be taking 5 class tests. Now, I am not a fan of taking a class test at the end of the course. So I'm not going to be taking the class test on the last week. So I have changed the schedule in this way. So what we're going to be doing is that if you remember that we're going to have our first class test on the 4th week. And if it's okay with you, we're going to be taking the class test at the beginning of the class so that we can have the rest of the class dedicated for the discussion. And we don't really have intention of attending the class test at the end of the class. So is that okay with you?
Yes, sir, that will be better.
Right. So, but there are sometimes there are situations where we cannot really do this. For example, in the last semester, we had 1 or 2 students who had taken a course that was a last year student, and their routine was in such a way that their previous class would end at 12 p.m. and our class would start at 11:30, right? So they could not attend the first 1 hour, half hour of class. So that's why for that student, we had to actually take the class test at the end of the class. And that was a really big problem. So I hope we don't really have that kind of situation here. So preferably, we're going to be taking the class test at the beginning of the class. So what we're going to be doing is that the first class test is going to be based on the topics that we're going to be studying in the first 3 classes. For example, the HTML and the CSS. So today we're going to be learning some bit of the HTML and CSS together. And in the next class, we're going to be talking about some of the frameworks and some advanced positioning stuff. So based on these things, we're going to be taking our first class test. And then we are going to dedicate our 3 classes for JavaScript only because this is really important. So for the 2 classes, we're going to be working on JavaScript with something similar to C. So if you remember C programming language, if you write a hello world in C programming language, if you run the program, where does the output show?
In terminal.
Console.
In a console, right? In a black screen with a white font and something like that. So we're going to be seeing that in our web browser, we also have a console like that. So for the first 2 classes mainly, we are going to be focusing on JavaScript like C. So we're going to be seeing the internal structure of JavaScript and how to declare variables, how to create functions. That is going to be very important. How to declare arrays. So how can we add new stuff in the array and how we can actually filter the arrays. So these are the things that we're going to be seeing in the first 2 classes. So that's going to be part of the JavaScript. So we're going to be creating small programs and how to solve problems using JavaScript. And we're going to be brushing off our basic JavaScript language, except for the HTML part in the first 2 classes. So what will happen is that you're going to be taking the second city based on those things of JavaScript. And in this class is going to be really interesting because in this class, we're going to be talking about how we can actually integrate the codes that we have written into the actual HTML stuff. So we're going to be seeing that, okay, I have an HTML button, and how can I actually make sure that if the button is pressed, one JavaScript function is called. So this is something that we're going to be seeing in this class. So this is going to be called the DOM and also the event manipulation. So we're going to be seeing that how we can actually make sure that JavaScript responds to those events. For example, if I right click on something or if I type something, how does it automatically change based on the JavaScript codes that we have written. So this is something that we're going to be studying in class 6. And this class is not going to be included in the city. So what I have done is that I tried to make sure that you get a good time after the midterm. But since we have to take a city and we cannot take a city here, so I have thought that, okay, let's take the city here. And that is going to be based on the 3 classes that we're going to be learning here. Okay, so the third new city that we're going to be taking is going to be on the 3 topics or the 3 weeks that we have learned here. So in this city, basically, you're going to be creating a window with the HTML and the CSS contents. And based on that, you're going to be applying some of the JavaScript stuff. And don't really worry about the syllabus because you have already learned about all these things in the midterm. So the things that you have learned in the midterm, portion of this is going to be in the syllabus of the city 3. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I have tried to make sure that you don't really have a lot of trouble getting through these things because yes.
So that means CT3 will cover the midterm syllabus.
Technically, yes, but not really, because in the midterm, we're going to be talking about also the CSS stuff and the HTML stuff, as well as the JavaScript stuff. But here, we're only going to be covering the JavaScript part. So basically, you don't really need to worry about the CSS flexbox on everything in this city. So you're going to create a very small window, and that does not necessarily include the CSS styling stuff, but only I would mark based on the JavaScript implementation and how did you actually connect the components together, and not really the styling stuff, right? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so the other things remains the same. So we're going to have the fourth city based on these two topics that we're going to be talking about, and also this one is going to be based on these two things. And since we're going to take 5 cities, it's going to be very small. So for example, it's not going to be like the typical cities of 20 marks. So it's going to be a city like of 10 marks, where I'm going to be testing the basic fundamental things. Have you learned how to style a particular element and how to create a table? So these are the things that I'm going to be testing on the city. So you don't really have to put a lot of effort in the city. But all you have to remember is that you don't share or communicate with others during the city. If you make sure that it happens, you can rest assured that you will get very good marks in the city essentially. Okay, so that was about the schedule, and I hope you have gone through the outline and you think it's okay. So if you have any confusion, you can ask me. Otherwise, we can start with the content of today's class.
I had one question.
Yes, go ahead.
So will you be showing us LS or SAS in CSS?
I'm thinking, are you interested in that?
Sir, showing us SAS would be really good, I think.
Okay, so we're not really going to be showing it too much detail. Okay, so let me try to squeeze some of that stuff in the next class. Okay, because that will be the last class of the CSS. So let's try to add that too. So we were actually a bit behind in the last class because we had a lot of students and we had a really good time learning about each other's stories. So I think this was the best we could actually go to. So let me copy this one and try to start from here. So I think this was our code, and I did some modification for the previous section. Let me remove that part, and let me paste this one so that we can continue from here. So today what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be finishing the agenda 1 with the help of you. And then I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that are not covered in this agenda, but they are useful for designing HTML. And then I'm going to give you a similar agenda that you can, and I will give you maybe 10 or 15 minutes of time, and you will try to create an agenda like that. Okay. So there's something that we're going to be doing. So this was the agenda that we were trying to create. And let me start from the beginning. We were trying to design an HTML file. So what is the purpose of an HTML file again? Does anyone remember?
So it's the structure of a web page.
Yeah. Why do we need structure? We can just send information.
So without a structure, the information will not be easily readable.
Right. So if I have all of these things in a plain text, it will not be readable. You have said it exactly the right way. So if I want to highlight that this is going to be a meeting agenda, so I want it to be a big font, right? And I want these things to have bullet points and everything. So these basic styling and segmentation are usually done by the HTML. Now, the important thing to remember is that HTML is entirely used for marking portions of the text. How those marking will be styled is going to be based on some other files called the CSS files. So the CSS actually takes care of how the marking will actually look. So for example, I have a tag right here that is an h1 tag that is going to be saying that to the browser that, okay, this text is going to be a header text. Now, how the header text looks and how big the text are, how much spacing there will be, these are the things that are going to be defined by the CSS or the styling sheet. So what we're going to be doing is that for today's class, for now, I'm going to be putting the stylings with the elements, and at the end of the class, hopefully we're going to be seeing how we can actually separate all the styling things and put them into a separate file. So let me start from the beginning. So by seeing this line right here, what are we actually implying when we have an HTML file? What are we saying to the browser? Why do we write this doc type HTML in the browser? Do you remember?
Sir, it's for indicating HTML5.
Okay, so basically, yes. So basically, what we're doing is we are recapping the previous class so that we can continue working on the file. So I am asking about each of the things that we studied in the last class. For example, in the last class, at the beginning, I have written this line. So I was asking, what does this line actually do? Why did we write this line?
So we're declaring what type of file this is.
Right. So basically, we are saying to the browser that, okay, don't try to think that this is a normal text file. This is a HTML file. So you will see that there are lots of HTML files that does not really have this line. So what happened was, yes, go ahead.
Sir, is the line indicate also the version we use?
Indirectly. So this line is actually available from the HTML5. So let me tell you how that came. So basically, when the internet was invented at the beginning, it did not really have a lot of standard. So we would have a lot of things that really did not follow any convention. It was not like C programming language where we would generate an error if there is a misspelling, right? But now we are seeing that, okay, we are using way more and more. So we need a lot of standard in the files that we are creating. So to make sure that a lot of developers are actually making the same file, we actually follow some bit of standard. So we have standard for the HTML and also the CSS and also the JavaScript. Now, the latest version of the HTML is currently available is HTML5. So to distinguish from the latest version of the HTML from the other ones, we actually type this line here. So when we are writing this, we are saying that, okay, this HTML document is composed with the latest version of the HTML5, right? So when we are saying that, the browser will understand that all the tags and the styles that are mentioned here are actually following the HTML5 standard. So what that does is that if I mistakenly make any notation that does not follow the HTML5 standard, the browser can actually notify sometimes. And there are diagnostic tools that can actually make sure that I am not really, that can raise errors if I am not following their rules. So this is why, this is one of the reasons why actually we are putting this. And do you remember what are the two things that are there inside an HTML file?
Sir, head and body.
Yes, there are two parts. One part is actually the head, and another part is the body. So what's the difference between the head and the body?
Sir, the head
Showing from the user, and the head mostly contains meta information.
Exactly. So the meta information is a very interesting term. So basically the body part is actually showing what is going to be visible inside the browser's viewport. So what basically we are seeing in the web page is actually going to be in the body. There are going to be stuff that are invisible, but mainly what we are going to be showing are actually going to be in the body. And the things that are required for the body to generate is going to be in the head. So the things that are extra information, for example, the title of the tab and what is going to be the character encoding, these are the extra information that we want. For example, we also want to add some author information, who wrote this HTML file. So these are the extra information that we want to add inside our, if we want to add these things inside our HTML5, we're going to put that in the head. Now, we were talking about the elements. So we have, this is something similar to the C coding that we write here. So if we think about the main function, when we are writing it in the C, we enclose it using the brackets. So similarly, we have something like this, but we are not using brackets, but we are using the element tags. So these things are actually called tag. And we are seeing that the same element that is being closed actually has the same text, but it has a slash in the beginning, showing that, okay, this is how the head start, and this is where the head actually ends. So between this is going to be the content of the head. So we are saying that, okay, the head now contains one thing that is called a title. And inside the title, we have a bit of text, which is going to be the title of the tab that we were seeing in the last class. So let me open up the HTML5 file in the browser so that we can see what is actually happening when we are changing the file. So if I now open this, I will be able to see that the tab was actually the, it actually contains the title that we were writing here. So let me change the title because we are actually working on the agenda 1. So let me change that to agenda 1. Okay. Now, before I move on to the body, and try to talk to you about the other stuff, what we can do is that when we have an HTML tag, we can actually put extra information on those HTML tags. For example, this is an HTML file. So this is an HTML tag that contains the head and the body. So what we can do is here, we can add some extra information that will give the browser some more information. For example, we can say that, okay, the HTML file that we have here actually contains the language that the text will have is going to be English. So we can say that by saying lang is going to be English. So when we are saying that, we are adding this information to the HTML file. So when the browser actually sees that, okay, we are parsing an HTML tag and it contains an extra information that the language is going to be English. So then it can actually understand that this is going to be readable by the English audience. Have you visited pages where the content is not really in English, but rather in some other language, and the browser actually suggests that, do you want to translate this page into some other language? Have you seen that?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
so how
sir.
does the browser understand that the content is actually not English or Bangla? So it's because of the language tag that we have right here. So the thing that we have right here is actually called an attribute. So we can add multiple attributes in a tag by putting extra information there. So one of the things that we're going to be putting here is something called the style. So this is about the attribute. So this one is actually called the tag. And if we have extra information on the tag, this thing is actually called an attribute. So we can actually add a lot of attributes that we're going to be seeing very soon. But before I move on to the body, I have one more thing to tell you. We can add a lot of stuff in the head. So one thing that we can actually add in the head is something called meta. So the meta is actually a normal tag, and it does not really have a closing tag. If you try to close it, you will actually close the previous one before the meta one, because the meta does not really have a closing tag. So we're not really going to be typing some text in the meta. What we can do is we can add some metadata of the HTML file. For example, we can add some meta attribute called character set. So we can say that the character set of this one is going to be UTF-8. So what does that mean? That we have an HTML file which contains a character set of UTF-8. So have you heard of Unicode?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have Unicode, and we can type in Avro keyboard, and this actually generates the text in the Unicode format. Do you remember what we used before Avro was there for typing Bangla?
Bijoy.
Sir,
Bijoy.
Bijoy.
Right? But Bijoy had a problem. So if you are creating a document in Bijoy and you are copying the document into some other computer that did not really have Bijoy, what would you see?
It broken or
Yes, it was broken,
Something
right?
miss.
Right, something was missed. So you would see boxes and boxes, but or something unreadable, right? So those were older generation fonts, and they were called ANSI font. But now we are moving on. So what that basically meant was those fonts only supported the characters of that particular language. So if I have an older font of ANSI font, for example, Sutoni MJ, it would only contain the characters of Bangla, right? So it would not have the characters of English. And we would have ANSI other English font that would not really contain the characters of other languages, for example, English or Bengali. Now we have bigger fonts that actually contains the character of all the languages that are available. So it's actually a universal font, right? So all the modern fonts that we use are actually Unicode fonts, which means that although you are seeing the letters of English, they actually contain all possible typesets, especially the popular ones around the world. So these languages or these fonts are actually called the Unicode font. So if you are planning to type some Bangla text or some non-English characters in your HTML document, you can actually put some extra information saying that, okay, I want you to parse these characters in a font that actually supports Unicode, which is called the UTF-8, right? So if you add that into your HTML document, what will happen is that if you type any Bangla text, it will be able to generate, render those texts in a font that actually supports Bangla text. So this is something that you might be seeing in the HTML. Yes?
Unicode কি যে মিন করতেছে UTF-8 দিয়ে
Yes, Unicode is basically the character set that one of the character sets that supports Unicode is UTF-8.
Sir, if I don't do this, don't give this UTF, then just it will support English, not any other language. Something
It's
like
not
this.
really about English or other language. What will happen is that the browser itself has a styling shift. So if you have an older computer and you don't write this, what will happen is that the older browser might generate all these text into a font that does not really support Unicode letters. So it might be possible that the browser is actually using a font that does not support the letters that you are writing here. So
Okay.
if I type Bangla here, it might not be able to render. So it all depends on the browser. Yes?
Sir, if we remove this tag, what is the default encoding format?
Okay, the default encoding format is dependent on the browser. Now, most browsers actually currently now use UTF. But let me give you a difference. So if you, did you ever type on the default Microsoft Word, Notepad? Did you ever type Bangla on the Notepad? On
Yes,
Windows?
Sir.
So if you try to save that, it will actually give you a warning, because the default saving format for that notepad is actually ANSI. So it will tell you that if you want to preserve these letters, you actually have to save it into a different character set. So the notepad actually had an older generation, but since browsers are being updated regularly, most of the browsers now usually have the default encoding of UTF. So you don't really have to write this, but you don't know what your client's browser actually is. So that's why, for precaution, you actually write those things. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So enough of these metadata. Let me now go to the actual content that we were talking about. So does anyone remember what is this HR tag?
The horizontal line.
Yes. So basically, using this, we were actually creating the horizontal lines. And what was these? What were these? What are these things for? The strong and the M.
Sir, strong for bold, M for sir italic.
Right. So basically, we are using strong to make a text bold, and we are also using M for making something italic. So why not bold, or why not italic? Why strong and M?
So that word we will use in CSS. So that's why we will not use here specifically.
Right. So the purpose of the HTML is only to mark different portion of the text. What the exact style will be should be defined in the CSS and not in the HTML, because that way we lose some of the flexibilities. So that was a problem for us. Now let me tell you something else. Since we have an H right here, what we would want to do is that if I want to create a text in the new line, what we would want to do is that we would create the new text into a another tag called paragraph. So let's say that we have this information, and then we want to add a warning that please come in time. So this is the information that we also want to add. But we're going to be seeing that if I refresh this, this content is actually sorry. So this content is not really in the new line, because although we have typed it into the new line, we're going to be seeing that all the text that we're going to be writing is actually on the same line. So in order to put a particular text on the new line, there are two ways we can do that. Do you remember how we can actually print a new line in C?
So backslash.
Yeah, so something like this was used in C. But if you want to put a new line in HTML document, you have to use a tag similar to HR. You are going to be using something called the BR. So if you use a BR, then what will happen is that there will be a new line on the text. Right. So it will take you to the next line. But this is not really a good idea, because if I want to have multiple lines, I will actually have to put a lot of BR. Instead, what I would want is that, okay, I want this particular text as a new segment of text, which is going to be a new line of text. So the way to do that is to enclose this one using something called a paragraph. Right. So if I put this in a paragraph, this is actually much more better, because then I have control over this particular bit of text. I will tell you what that means. So what I was saying is that you might have a lot of lines in your HTML document. So if you are typing BR, 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 it gets difficult to track those texts. So a better way to write new lines of text is actually put them into a paragraph tag. So a better way to write the header is actually to use a h1 tag or something like that. So a better way of writing a new line is actually put them in a paragraph. So the browser will automatically take care of the spacing for you. As you can see, there is automatically some spacing added here, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
if you have a new line of text, it's better to put them in a paragraph so that you can control the whole text here. So this was for this portion. So let me quickly show you the bullet points, and let me give you some bit of styling here. So quickly, let's try to put the topics. So before I move on to this one, let me ask you, what was the H1 tag?
Heading tag.
It was the header tag. So if I put text in the header tag, the text will actually become bigger and it will become bold and so on. So how many header tags were there?
Sorry, H1 to H6.
H1 to H6. So if I type H2 instead of H1, the text will become bigger?
Smaller.
Becomes small.
So H1 is the largest one and H6 is actually the smallest one. So the difference between the H6 and the paragraph is that the H tags will still have the bold font and they will have a bit of spacing. That is going to be different from the paragraph usually. So let me try to continue with the topics that we have right here. So what we can do is that we can actually the question.
Sir, what is the purpose of the tag EM?
Oh, the tag EM actually tries to the full form is actually emphasis. So one of the ways that you can put emphasis is by putting it into the italic form. So we did not really write any styling code, but what happens is that in the browser, the default style for the emphasis is actually italic. That's why we're seeing italic font here. So by default, if I want to use that default style, I would actually use emphasis, right? Is it clear? It is
Yes,
not
sir.
actually in this document, but we just added this.
Yes, sir. It's clear, sir.
Okay. Anyone had a question? Any other one? Okay. So we were typing the header right here. So we also have a topic, and this is this has a bigger font, right? So are we going to use an H1 tag for this?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
It's big, but it's not as big as the H1. So what tag should we use?
H3.
H3, okay. So H2 might seem the difference that we are seeing. This actually H3 should be better. So let's try to use H3. So title of first topic, and we're going to be enclosing them into H3, and let's see how that looks. And let's see. Okay, so this looks good. And then we are going to be putting these bullet fonts here. So how are we going to use bullets? So in order to use bullet, we have to use something called the OL tag. So we have
ULLI.
sorry, UL tag. So if you have a look at this list, they are actually the list, and there are two types of list. One where we don't really put any kind of sequence, and another ones where we actually have some sort of sequence. So if we don't really want to have any sequence, but we really want to have the topics and the list, then we use something called the unordered list. So if we don't really want them to be in order, we have to have something called the unordered list. So we take the unordered list and we say UL. So UL means, what does the U stand for?
So unordered list.
Unordered, and L for list. And in the unordered list, all the child element must be of list item. So all the child elements must be of inside the unordered list. You cannot have a paragraph. So if you do this, you will not actually get an error, but the browser will definitely be confused. So inside the unordered list, all the items that you're going to be listing should be in the LI, which means the list item. So let's see what was the first list item, which was discussion point list with bullets. And let's copy this and try to put some other topics. Second, talking. And we also have the third. So let's copy this thing and try to create the other ones. Let's see if that works. If I refresh that, this gives us the idea. Yes?
Sir, in topic one, there is topic one is bold, but title of the first topic is not bold.
That is an excellent observation. This is something that we're going to be taking care of.
Sir, we can use paragraph tab with font size.
Sir, can we use strong in topic one and H3
Yes.
in title of the
Yes,
first?
this is something that we are going to be using today. So we're going to be seeing that, okay, that's a very good observation. In fact, this was my topic after we finished this. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be taking care of this thing. We want it to be centered and we want it to be blue. So there is something that we're going to be seeing first, and then I was going to come here. So how we can actually do this, right?
Okay.
So let me first finish this and let me try to show you how we can actually put sequence here and different types of sequence here. And that will give you an idea of how we can do this. Will be a bit too much for you because the things that we are still doing is actually part of the previous class. We have not even started about today's class yet. So this was about the unordered list. If I want to have an ordered list, what do you think should be the tag that we're going to be using?
Sir, OL.
OL. So if you have guessed it, right? So if I want to have an ordered list, I will actually use something called the OL. So let me copy all these things because I didn't really want to waste a lot of time here. So let's say that I want to have it numbered. And if I, so the rule are the same. So if you want to have an OL or an unordered list, here all the childs should be list item. If I now refresh this, I should be able to get this one. Oh, I actually missed the topic. Let me copy this and try to paste this here. So this is going to be the topic 2. And this is going to be the second topic. Okay. And this should actually give us this one. So as you can see that the default sequence for the browser is actually for the ordered list is actually 1, 2, 3. And there's something that we're getting here. But for the other ones, we would want to see that the sequence is actually given in either Roman or alphabets. So we're going to be seeing how we can actually do that. Let me first copy those things. There's going to be the topic 2, and then we have the topic 3, and also the topic 4. So this is something for the topic 3, and we have topic 4. So this is the third one, and this is going to be the fourth one. Also, in this case, we want them as letter. And here, we actually want them as Roman. Okay. And all of them are actually in the uppercase. Now, if I want to change the way that the list is going to work, we have one attribute for that. And this is going to be a common attribute for all the visible things that we are seeing here. And this is going to be called the style. So for this ordered list, the sequence is based on numbers, and that is fine with us. But in this ordered list, what we have is that we want that the sequence should be in the letters. So what we're going to be saying is that we're going to be adding a style attribute, and this is going to be common for all the visible things that we're going to be seeing here. So for this ordered list, for the HTML, we have different elements, and they have different type of style. For example, if you are using an ordered list, you can actually change the style of how the list items are going to be shown. So if you want to see what kind of styling attributes are used by the ordered list, you can do a quick search, because since it has a lot of elements and we don't really have if I want to compile them, there will be a huge book. So the good thing would be to actually search for the things that you actually look for. So what I want is that I want the ordered list style attributes in the HTML. So let's see what comes up. So if I type here, the Geeks for Geeks actually gives us the right answer, but we would want to go to a reference page, which is going to be for the W3 school. So if I want to see what type of things that we want, so the easiest way we can do that is using a style called list style type. So as you can see, it actually supports a huge number of styles. So what we can do here is that we want to say that, okay, the list style type that we want to have is going to be the letter. So let's see which one actually supports letter. So we want uppercase, and the letters that we see are actually basically the alpha. So we want the letter type to be upper alpha. So if I say that, okay, in the style, we want the list style type to be upper alpha, what will happen is that all the list items that we're seeing, they are going to be shown in the alphabetic orders. If I now refresh this, I will see that the style of this has changed to the alphabets. So who can tell me, if I want to put them in the Roman numerals, what shall I have to do here?
Upper Roman.
Yes. If I want to find out if Roman is supported, as I can see that the Roman is supported both in the lower one and also the upper one. In our case, we actually want to see them in the upper case of the Roman. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be saying that, okay, here the style should be the list style type of upper Roman. So how shall I add this in this particular list? Where shall I change?
Sir, along with starting OL tag.
We're going to add list style type.
No,
No,
sir,
sir.
style is it.
It's going to be in the style attribute. So basically, we are changing the style attribute of this OL. We can change the style attribute of a lot of visible items, and this is going to be the topic of our class. So the style attribute of this is going to be changed, and the attribute that we want to change is the list style type, and it's going to be upper Roman. And this should actually give us the thing. And this is how we can actually do that. So this actually gives us a view to one of the most fundamental things that we're going to be doing, is that we're going to be changing different styles of different elements of the HTML.
Sir, upper can sir.
Because we have this in the upper, because if I change it to the lower, it will become lower. This is also supported. If I change it to the lower one, it will become the lower. And do you understand how we can change this one to the lower also?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
By changing this one to the lower. So you can only put the supported ones. So these are the supported ones right here. Who can tell me what will happen if I put none here?
Sir,
Sir, nothing will be there.
Nothing will actually be there, right? So this is particularly useful if we want to create a menu type system. So if I want to type a common way to create menu is to use these types of things where the list type will be none. So we can explore all of these things, and I would request you to actually find out different styles of all the things that we discuss here. But let's try to create something from this. We want to change some other stuff. For example, we want to see that, okay, I want to have the header to be in the center, and also it should have the color blue. So let's try to do that. If I want to change the header of that agenda, which element style should I change?
Colors. H1 tag.
sir, H1.
Which element should I change in the HTML if I want to change the style of this one?
So element
Position.
is the color.
The H1, and in the H1, I would put which attribute?
Style attribute.
Style attribute. So inside the style attribute, I can actually change the color. The color is actually supported. We're going to be learning a lot of things. So one of them is actually color. So we have a huge number of options to change, but we're going to be selecting with the basics one. Okay, so we can select the color, and we can put hexadecimal codes, and we can also put RGB values. This is something that we're going to be seeing in the next class. So in the next class, we're going to be fine-tuning the attributes that we're going to be learning here. But for now, we have some common values that are actually given the alias. For example, if I type blue here, it will actually give me a horrible blue, but this is actually supported by the HTML. So you can actually put green, and this would again give you a horrible green, but this is actually supported by the browser. So you can put some commonly named color, or you can use the hexadecimal value, or you can use the RGB values, and there are many other ways to do that. This is something that we're going to be starting in the next class. But for now, let's try to put a common value, which is blue. So this would give us the color blue. Okay. We want to do something more, and what also we want to do is that we want to make it center. So if I want to make it a center, what kind of attribute, styling attribute would this be?
For alignment.
Yes, alignment, right? So we are actually trying to change the text alignment to the center. So if I want to change the text alignment, there is also a styling attribute named exactly that. So we can say that, okay, text align is going to be center, and that would actually give us the alignment as center. So what we can do is we can pick different elements and we can actually update their styling sheets. So basically here we are writing the CSS code. We're going to be seeing that we can actually move all the styles to the top, but for now, let's just try to edit one by one so that we can get an idea of what is actually happening here. Let me try to quickly move forward to something else. The font looks really horrible. Does anyone know which font is this? Which font this is?
Here,
this one is actually Times New Roman, and the font that we have right here is much cleaner, and it is actually called, this one is actually the Arial font, right? So what we want is that we want to change this whole document's font into an Arial font instead of the default Times New Roman. Now you tell me, if I want to change the content or the font style of the whole document, which element style should I change?
So the body.
So in body we can change the whole.
I can pick all the elements and I can put the style in all the documents, but all the elements are actually child of which document, which element?
Body, sir.
The body. So if I change
Body, sir.
the style, right? So if I change the style of the body, hopefully the style will be applied to all the child elements. So the way we can do that, we can change the font using something called the font family. The reason why we are using font family instead of font name is that you can actually put multiple fonts. So if one font is not in the client's computer, they can look for in the next font and in the next one and so on. But we're not going to be doing that today. So let's try to use Arial font because we are suspecting that this might look like an Arial font. So what we're doing here is that we are setting the style in the body. So what will happen is that all the child's element will actually inherit this font style. So if I now refresh, hopefully all the elements actually have become Arial, and this looks much like the agenda that we have right here. Do you see how we are changing these things?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what happens is that although we have not specifically changed the font of this one, this is actually being inherited by the actual body document. Now, before I move on to the other stuff, let me tell you something, that if a particular element has its own style, it will be
Sir.
applied on top of the inherited one. Yes?
Sir, I have the same question, that if conflict arise, like if
Yes.
we make H3 topic one that own style in line coding, then what
Right.
will happen? Because we
Okay.
have
The way to solve this conflict is to think like a human. So let's say you have inherited a car from your father and you have bought your own car. Which one would you use more?
sir, own code.
Yes. So this is what happens in HTML2. They are like humans too. So if you inherit a style in an HTML document and you have your own style, obviously you will prefer which one?
Sir, own style.
Own style. So let's see that this paragraph right here, and in this paragraph, I have said that, okay, the style of this one and the fonts family is going to be Times New Roman. So if I do this, what will happen is that it will become Times New Roman, although the body style is actually Arial. Why did this happen?
Sir, priority.
You can think like this, that the body font is applied once. So all of these things has become Arial. After that, we're seeing that, okay, this paragraph tag has its own style. So this style will be applied on top of the body style. So initially it will have an Arial font, and then this font will be applied on top of that. Did you get it?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is going to be the sequence. So we are slowly going from the high priority to the low priority ones. So we have seen that the element can have their own style, and then we can actually inherit the other styles as well.
স্যার
So there's
এটা
something
এই কারণে হয়েছে লাইন বাই লাইন পড়ে এই কারণে রিড করে
it actually has to do with the priority. So if an element actually has its own style, it will have the more priority one.
ওকে স্যার
Okay. It's not really like the interpreters. Okay. If any of you have any question, you can just interrupt me. at any time, no worries.
Sir, can we change the list number to a custom value?
Yes, we can change a lot of these things. We can even change the stylings to even not only the custom value. You can actually put images like this also. But these are a bit advanced topic, and it would require a lot of CSS stuff. But there are some common things that you can do. For example, you can select that, okay, in the agenda, as you can see, the 1, 2, 3s are in bold, but these are not in bold. So this is something that we can do very easily. But if you want to change the sequence, it would be a bit difficult. But we can do this.
Yes.
So these are the things that you can explore on your own. You can try that, okay, how can I actually change the sequence into something that I really want? I want the sequence to be 1, 3, 5. How can we do that? You can search it on your own and you will find the answers. But before I move on to the other parts, let me try to fix something else. So we are seeing here that we have the topic that is in bold, but the actual title of the topic is not really in bold. So how can we actually do that? We are seeing here that all the things that we have here is actually bold. This is going to be a very important thing. I want you to focus on this. As you can see, this thing is bold. Can you tell me for which reason is this text bold?
Because it's a hidden
H1 tag, sir.
Because
H3 tag.
this is an H3 tag. So H3 makes sure that the text is bigger and also is bold. So it's actually being applied here. So what we want is that we want to select this bit of text right here, and then what we want is that this bit of text will have the font weight of normal instead of bold. So in order to select this one, if we use paragraph, we can enclose this using paragraph, but this will be a problem. Let's say that, okay, we have selected this using the paragraph. Let me actually give you the answer. If you want to select a particular bit of text and apply style there, what you would use is something called a span. Let me not waste time giving counter examples. Let me just give you the answer. So if you want to select a particular bit of text and you want to apply style on that particular text, you have to use a tag called span. So the span does not really apply anything. So if I now refresh this, nothing will happen. Everything will remain the same. So no style is applied. So what happened is that this portion of text is now separated. Now what you can do is you can apply style there and it will be applied in that particular case. So what you can do is you can apply style and you can say that the font weight is going to be normal. And that will actually give you the normal font weight. Did you see?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what happened is that we can actually apply different font. We can actually select different portion of the text and we can actually apply different styles there. So obviously we can actually do that in other cases too. So what we would have to do is that we would actually have to copy these things. And we can actually, when we're using Sublime, you can actually select multiple portion and you can actually paste the similar things. And you can also select here before the H3 and you can type together. So you can say that, okay, this is going to be span. As you can see, both of the things will now have span. As you can see, it will become like this. So what is the purpose of span?
For select a specific text to style.
Right. So if I want to select a specific bit of text and I want to apply style there, I would actually have to use span. Now let's come to the top portion. In the top portion, we have used something like this, and this looks similar, but obviously we have to make the time and the location bold. So let's first do that. And what we also want to do is that we want to make this text also center. So
Sir.
Yes.
স্যার এখানে আমরা যে একটা রো তৈরি করছি এটা কিভাবে, মানে একটা রো এর মধ্যে যে ডেট টাইম এন্ড লোকেশনটা রাখলাম, এই রোটা কিভাবে?
Hey sir,
that's a very good question. We did not really put any line breaks here. So how did this new line came, right?
Yes sir.
Is that your question? Because we did not really
Yes,
put
sir.
any new lines. So why is it that if I type text here, it does not go to the new line, but if I type text here, it automatically goes to the new line, right?
Yes sir.
This is the exact answer that I'm going to be giving within 1 minute, inshallah. Okay. But do you remember what we are going to be doing here currently?
ইয়েস স্যার, আমরা এখন স্যার এই যে ডেট তারপরে টাইম যেগুলো আছে এগুলো জাস্ট সেপারেট করব এবং সেন্টারের দিকে নিব।
Yes,
Bold করবো,
center
bold.
দিকে নিয়ে আসবো। Bold করবো first এবং
Center
center
দিকে
দিকে
নিয়ে
নিয়ে আসবো।
আসবো।
Excellent. So let's we know how to make this bold using something called the strong. And let's try to separate them into new lines so that we can understand better. And we have this as strong, and then let's try to remove the emphasis because this is not really in the dropout. So this is the content that we have right here. I have put them into the new line. So will it become in the new line here? I have put all of them in the new line. So will this also become in the new line?
No, sir.
প্যারাগ্রাফ ইউজ করা লাগবে।
Oops, sorry. Yes, if I want to put them into the new line, I have to use paragraph. But if I type a new line here, it will not automatically become new line here, right? So that's that. Now, what we want is that we want to select this bit of text and we want to make them center. And what was the styling attribute for making this center?
Align.
Text align.
Text align, and we would put center. Okay. How do we select a bit of text? So far,
Through the span.
using something called a span. So what we can do is that we can enclose this using a span, and we can say that, okay, this portion is going to be a span. And then we are going to be applying the styling attribute that I want to make this text align to be center. Okay, that should give us what kind of output? So what would happen if I now refresh this?
Sir, everything will be in
Yes, this portion is something that we have selected using the span, and then hopefully it should become center. But if I now refresh this, you will see that the output is not updated. So if I refresh this, you will see that this is not center. The reason why this is not in center, if I want to understand this, let me show you what is actually happening when we are using a span to select a particular stuff. Listen to me very carefully. So far, we have seen different types of elements. There are two types of elements.
Sorry,
One,
because of the mistake.
let me give you the answer. We have seen different types of elements. For example, we have seen H1, we have seen paragraph, we have seen span, we have seen a lot of things. All of this can be classified by two types. So one is called an inline element. Another one is called block element. So if you look at H1 tag right here, so this is going to be an H1. I want you to see that the blue box and the orange box that you see right here. So the blue box actually tells you that how much space is the H1 taking. So can you see that the H1 is actually taking up the whole width of the browser?
Yes, sir.
So if I remove this and also show that the blue box is actually taking up the whole width of the browser, and the orange one is actually the spacing, extra spacing. If I show you the span, have a look at the span. Is the span taking up the extra space?
No, sir.
No, it is only taking up the space that it needs. So
Yes,
if an element actually takes the space that it needs, it is actually called an inline element. What that means is that you can put other elements on the same line. But is it the case for the H1? Can you put something in front of the H1?
Yes, sir.
Think about it. If you look at the H1, this H1 tag is actually taking up the whole line. So anything that you put after the H1, it will automatically go to the
Full line.
new line. So
New
the
line.
same thing is for the HR. The HR is actually a block element. So these are actually called block element, which means that whenever you put them, they will occupy a new line and they will not allow anything in front of it or at the back of it. So
Yes,
the
sir,
same
yes.
thing is true for the HR. So if you look at the HR, it is actually taking up the whole width. But is it true for the span?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. The span actually takes up only the space that it needs. So which means, is it a block element?
No,
Yes,
sir.
sir. It is
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, it is not a block element. This is called an inline element. So the span that we were using is actually an inline element. Is paragraph a block element or inline element?
block.
Sir, block.
As we can see that although we have place coming time in such short space, but notice the blue box. It is taking up the whole width. So we're seeing that the paragraph is actually a block element, which means that if you type anything in front of it, it will automatically go to the where?
New line.
A new line.
Next line.
So as you can see that we have a paragraph, and then if I type anything, it will automatically go to the new line without me explicitly saying that there should be a line break. So by default, most of the elements are actually block elements. So if you look at the OL, it is actually a block element, and also the list item that we have, they are also the block element, right? So for selecting a bit of text, span is actually a good idea if you want to select a bit of text. But if you want to center this, what will happen is that if you have a span and if you want to center this, it will actually become center in its own space. But we want this to be centered among the whole document. So we want this thing to actually take up the whole space. So if I want to have a particular block of text and I want it to take the whole space, I have to use something called the div. So I would actually rename this to div. So the div is exactly like span, but the difference between the div and the span is that the div actually takes up the whole space. If I talk formally, the span is an inline element and the div is actually a
block element.
Block element. So if I now refresh it, you will see that this will become center. Tell me why.
So before it was inline, now it is blocked. So that's
now
why
it is blocked. So now the whole width is actually the whole browser. Now it can actually center among the browser. Tell me, before, was it actually being centered?
Yes, sir.
It was being centered, but inside its own space, not in the browser's window. Do you get it?
yes.
So now we are saying that okay, the element that you're trying to center should take up the whole browser space that you can so that you can actually calculate the center space correctly. So this was it for the div and the span. So do you understand the difference?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So time for you to do some practice. Hopefully I know that was a lot to take in, but hopefully you could be able to grasp some of them. We have covered these things, and we have talked about the div and the span, and also we have one more thing that we want to talk about before I give you the task, and that is going to be spacing. So we're seeing that we have this text right here, and we want to have a bit of spacing between these three particular things. So as you can see, all of them are actually together. We want to have a bit of spacing between the date and the time and the location. So the way we can do that, the first thing that we have to do is that we have to select this bit of text. And then we would say that, okay, I want to have a bit of spacing around these things. And also, I have to select this one, and I would have to say that, okay, I want to have a bit of spacing between these things, and so on. Okay. So the way we can do that is by using the first thing that we will have to do is that we will have to select this portion of the text. You tell me, what shall we use to select this portion of the text? Are we going to use div or span? Is it going to be span or div?
Span.
Why not div?
So we will take the whole block.
Yes. We want this content to be in the same line, but if I use a div, that this date will take a single line and it will go to the new line. This is something that we don't want. That's why for selecting this portion of the text, we're going to be using span. You should be crystal clear of why you're using which element. So let's select this span right here, and also this one, and also that one. Have span. Let me remove the word line wrap so that it's easier. Okay. So we have these particular things and we have wrapped them in the span. Fine. Now what we want is that we want some bit of spacing. We say that, okay, if you have a span, I would actually want to put spacing around it. So spacing is also a styling attribute. So what we can do is we can put style, and there are two types of space that we can do. So there's something that we're going to be seeing in the next class when we are studying borders. So if we want to have a space outside the actual element, so you have a border And if you want to have a space inside the border, between the element and the border, you use something called padding. And if you want to have a space outside the border with the other elements, you use something called the margin. Basically, they are often the same, but they have a slight difference that we're going to be talking about in the next class. So let's say I want to apply a margin of 10 pixels. I have applied margin on what kind of element? Block element or inline element?
Inline, sir.
Inline element. So if I apply a margin on an inline element, it will not be bothered about the top and the bottom. It will only be bothered about what is on the left and the right. If you think about it, when we are writing in a line, we are only thinking about what is in the front and what is in the back. So if I apply a margin on an inline element, it will not have an effect on the top and the bottom. It will only have an effect on the left and the right. So if I mention margin, it will only apply the margin on the left and the right, not in the top and the bottom, right? So if I now refresh this, you will see that there is a margin on the right side, and also on the left side, there is something that we are not seeing in the blank eye, but we can actually inspect them. So if I now right click here and I try to inspect this, it should actually take me to this span. I want you to notice the orange color. Can you see that there is an orange color on the both side?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So if I mention margin, it is applying margin to all the sides, top, bottom, right, and left. But since the span is an inline element, this is being actually computed only on the left side and on the right side. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we can do the same thing for the other elements as well. Let's try to copy this one and try to put this here. If I apply this, and we should actually get some space here. So if I now see this, I will see that, okay, the span has this one, and also this span actually has this one, and also this span has this one. So we have some bit of space here. We could also use padding, but the result would be the same. So did you get an idea of how to do some kind of spacing and everything?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I had omitted one thing, which is the border. We're going to be talking about the border and the border arrays in the next class. But before that, I would actually ask you to do something similar to this. So you have done a bit of agenda, and this looks more or less like this. And we can obviously change the color of this text. How can we change the color of this text? For example, this looks gray. So how can we change this to gray?
So using color attribute.
Style color.
Yes. Style color attribute. Tell me, should I individually apply color attribute to all of this span, or I have some better way?
Sir, inside div.
Excellent. So think about it. All these spans that we have right here, they are actually child of this one. And we know that the styles are actually inherited. So if I apply the color or the style in a parent element, it is actually inherited into the child ones. So the color, if I say that the color is going to be gray, it will actually be applied to the child element. So as you can see, all the childs have become gray because we had applied that. So there is something that you should keep in mind. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be giving you an agenda similar to this one, but it will have a different outlook. So let me upload that into your drive. So this is your section B, and let me upload that into your drive so that you can actually have a look at that. And I'm going to be giving you 15 minutes so that you can try to come up with something like this. We're going to be showing you a lot of cheat codes also to help you memorize these things. You don't really need to remember, but there are common things that you can actually keep in mind. For example, the color, the padding, and the margin, and so on. So this is the agenda that I want you to work on. So let me save a bit of time and give you the link in the chat box. So have you all written your roll numbers in the chat box?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
No worries. No worries. You can write it later. You can do the assignment here, but remember to write it. This is the link. All of you are writing, so the link is going away. Okay, let me give you the link again. So I want you to click on the link and try to make an HTML document that looks kind of like this. So I'm giving you 15 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to be asking one of you or two of you to show your code after at 3:55. I'm also giving you the code that we have just written so that you can follow this if you want. So let me copy this one, and we can say that, okay, this is going to be the agenda one. And let me also give you this. If you want, you can see this HTML document. Do you have access to this drive or this folder?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, can you share your code? It will be easier.
I'm sorry?
স্যার আপনি যে কোড লিখছেন না এটা যদি শেয়ার করতেন তাহলে একটু ইজি
Yes,
হতো
it is already shared.
স্যার হোয়ার স্যার
In the drive. Can you access this? I have uploaded this already. Can you see? Do you have access?
I'm trying to.
I'm actually giving you the link. Okay, but I want you to access this in other times also. Do you have access to this? In the ELMS, I have posted the link to the drive. I'm also giving you the link here.
Yes sir, I have access.
Okay, good.
স্যার কতটুকু টাইম আছে?
Don't worry, it's not an exam. How much did you do?
Sir, up to please bring.
Okay, could you do the table? I know it's difficult to do most of the things using the things that we have learned, but I have just given you some opportunity to do some hands-on work. Don't worry, you try for.
There is
The second table I'm still doing.
Uh-huh.
I only did the first part, the second table I'm still doing. I can
Okay, don't worry.
Okay.
So try for 2 minutes, then you can show it to the class. Okay, I think we can move on to the next one before this. So how did you do? Could you do some bit of the things at least?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can anyone of you show the code so that we can discuss? Let me stop sharing so that anyone can show. Who will show?
So can I show?
Yeah, Tasim, go ahead. Now, I understand that the things that we have learned in this class is not sufficient to do all the things, but I would request you to try. I should have said this earlier, but yes.
স্যার এখানে কি স্প্যান দিয়ে আর মার্জিন ইউজ করে ওই যে
That was the idea, but I'm sure this is not really possible. But that was the idea. Don't worry about it. I just wanted you to have a hands-on experience of the things that we have learned here. Don't worry if it's not complete. We're going to be seeing how to do this in a better way. Okay, but let me just see your efforts. Okay, so could you do the top title? How did you make the title on the right side?
Alignments, a text alignment.
Yes. So it's very clever that you know that there are other values that you can put. So so you can actually put them in the right and some other way also. Okay. So how did you do the spacing? For example,
Sorry, sir?
In the agenda, I think there is a spacing between the attendee and the attendant's name.
So I can do with padding.
Okay. So you have done some padding of 20 pixels. Okay. We are seeing here that the attendee's name and the reading list and the supply list, all of them are in the same line. So this is actually done using a hidden table inside. But I really wanted you to try on the padding, and this is exactly what you have done. That's very good. But let me ask you, if I were to tell you that you have to do this using the padding, but you have to keep the length same, what would you do? So if you show me the HTML, can you show me the HTML?
I can show you the HTML. Here it is, sir.
The in the browser. Yeah. So as you can see, the attendees name, the reading list, and the supply list, all of them are actually in different directions, right? So they are not aligned. So if I tell you
Yes,
that,
sir.
okay, you have to use padding to make them align, what would you do?
Sir, here I can use span.
Yes, in the span, you have used padding, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you think about it, in the actual document, the attendees name, the reading list, and the supply list, all of them start from the same location. Okay. Open that one. Yeah.
You would need to
So
use different patterns
so
for
all of them are
alignment.
actually from the same location. So if I told you that, okay, you have to do this using the padding, how would you do it?
Sir, do you have to use div?
You can use div. You can use div, but if you use
Sir,
div, it will
here,
actually go to the new line. You actually have to
yes,
use
sir.
span.
Sir, I can try this with div, but here I face some problems. That's why I can use a
Yeah.
span, sir.
Now, my question was actually how you can align this using the padding. The answer would be to use different values of
Sir,
padding.
I used deep. The answer is correct. Shows
Sir,
correct.
So
Excellent.
here
So
attendees is a block. It's a part of block.
yeah, it's part of a block. So if you use div instead of the span here, that portion actually will go to the next line. So if you want to have them in the same line, and as you can see that the attendees name, the ring list, and the supply list, all of them are starting from the same position, you will actually have to use different values of the padding, right? So
Yes, sir.
for attendee, you will have more padding. For the please read, you will have less padding, and for the later one, some less padding, right? And
Yes, sir.
what there's something else that you can try on is that when you are applying padding, it is actually applied on the all
Sir.
sides, but you can actually
Okay, sir. I didn't notice that.
yes, that's something that I was talking about. But the actual thing was done using table. So we're going to be seeing that in this class, inshallah. But there's one other thing
Sir,
that yes.
I can write table, sir, but
Don't worry,
in
we're
the
going to be
time
studying
you
about table today. I'm glad that you did not use table because I really wanted you to use the things that we have learned here. Well done. And there's one other thing that I want to tell you all is that when we are using padding, you can use the padding is applied on all sides. You can instead use padding left or padding right or padding top or padding bottom. If I divided using hyphen, so it would be padding hyphen left, padding hyphen top. So this way you can actually allocate padding on only one side. Okay, so this is something that you
সেই ক্ষেত্রে আমরা স্যার মার্জিন ব্যবহার করতে পারি না
you can use margin or padding. In this case, it's not really a different case. In the next class, we're going to be seeing what is the difference between the margin and the padding. Okay. So Rokon wants to also show, right?
Sir, but complete হয়নি sir.
Okay, no worries. So did you use div here?
Yes sir.
Okay, can you show it?
Yes sir.
Okay, so how did you do it? So you have enclosed them into a div, and then you used a margin. Oh, and did you stop sharing?
Sir, এখন দেখা যাচ্ছে?
Yeah, I can see. So can you show me the output? in the
টোটাল
browser.
স্ক্রিনটাকে দেখাতে পারতেছে না, হোল স্ক্রিনটা কিভাবে আনতে হয় এটা আমার মনে হচ্ছে না স্যার। ইয়েস স্যার।
So when you share the
স্যার
screen,
আমি
you can.
একটা জিনিস দেখাতে যাচ্ছিলাম।
Okay, no worries. Rukun, when you're sharing the screen, you can select the whole screen or you can select the a particular window. So when you're sharing the screen, you will have to select the whole screen.
ওকে স্যার, ওকে।
Okay, you can. Let me see what Rokib wants to show. Rokib, can you share the screen?
ইয়েস স্যার, একটু দাঁড়ান।
No worries.
একটু। ওকে, স্যার দেখা যাচ্ছে?
Yeah.
স্যার যে এই কি বলে অ্যালাইনমেন্ট গুলা এর তো স্যার পিক্সেল পারফেক্ট করা যায় না। তো এমন কোনো ওয়ে আছে যেটা হচ্ছে কি বলবো অ্যাটেন্ডিজ এর পরে হয়তো বা একটা নির্দিষ্ট স্পেসিং তারপরে পিএইচডি এর পরে।
So the exact thing, the right way of doing that is something to use a table or something similar to Flexbox. There is something that we are going to be seeing in the next class, inshallah. But I really wanted to see how far you can go using the things that you already know. For example, the
এসব হার্ড কোডেড করা কাজ।
Yes, this is hard coded, right?
পিক্সেল দিয়ে করা।
Yes, you have put different pixels, right?
Yes sir.
So but I can see that you have put the same pixel.
So আমি দেখাতে চাচ্ছি
না স্যার, এই যে 58 পিক্সেল, 45 পিক্সেল, 40 পিক্সেল and then নিচে 245 পিক্সেল।
I think I'm seeing the wrong screen. I think I'm seeing the screen of
দুইজন যদি শেয়ার করতেছে।
Sir, two of people are sharing.
Oh.
Okay. Oh. Okay, so let me see the screen of Rokib. How can I see the screen?
Sir, you can pin it.
Okay, let me try to pin this one. Okay, now I can see. So, as I can see that you are putting different values for the margin, right? Can you show me the output in the HTML?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this looks wonderful. So tell me, how did you do the tables?
টেবিল অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমি সবগুলো স্প্যান ইউজ করছি and মার্জিন রাইট দিয়ে আলাদা আলাদা পিক্সেল দেওয়ার পর হচ্ছে।
Excellent. That looks absolutely wonderful. So that looks wonderful. And how did you actually do the content breakfast? So you had added lots of padding on the left. This is exactly what I wanted. This is wonderful to see. And I'm really glad that you did not really use the brick, because if you had used the brick, it would not really be something that would be similar to the asymmetry. So let me see the HTML once again.
So I'm sharing the
Okay, I mean in the browser.
Oh, sorry.
That looks wonderful. So all of you can see that this looks pretty much exactly the same as the asymmetry. Well done. So is there anything that you found interesting about this implementation? Anything challenging that you have done here?
Yes sir, আইবলিং করে করে সবগুলো পিক্সেল পারফেক্ট করতে হয়।
Right.
অনেক টাফ।
That's very difficult. So what we have done is that by using very small resources, we tried to imitate something. And we're going to be seeing today that we can actually do this using a very less effort, hopefully in the next class. Okay, let me continue with the class then.
Yes sir.
So does anyone have any question regarding the agenda 1 or 3? No, I think.
So if you have part that problem, sir.
Sorry?
So the problem arises in the table part.
In the table part, yes. So I wouldn't expect that you would do it perfectly, but it's wonderful to see that Rokib has done this, and this is exactly how we would do if we had only this knowledge. But we are going to be seeing that we can actually do much more using some other inbuilt tools that are available. So let me show them to you. So far we were trying to do the meeting agenda 1, and we have done this. And the problem arises when we were trying to introduce the table. But before we move on to the thing that I want to show you, I had one other thing to talk about, which is we had missed one spot, which is the notes and the action and also this line. So can anyone tell me how we can actually do this? We can put the notes and the action here. Where shall we put this? After the OL. What tag should we use when we are using this?
So maybe an H2 tag.
Maybe an H2 tag. Let's try this. So this one and this one, all they have the same font size.
Then we should use H2.
Almost same.
Almost same. So this one was using H3, I think. So let's try H2 first, and let's see how it goes. So notes and action items. So this is going to be the H2 tag. Let's see how it goes. And this looks bigger. So let's stick with the H3. And H3. Okay. And one other thing is that this one actually is in blue color. So you should know by now how we can make it blue. We're going to be using the style attribute. And we're going to say that the color is going to be blue. Okay. And we also have to have one horizontal line. And this would make it like the agenda 3. Okay. We had one extra line here. Let me comment this out. And one thing that you should keep in mind is that if you want to comment something, what you will have to do is you have to have this syntax. So if you want to comment this, you have to start with this, and you have to finish with this. Okay. So if you put something around around this, you will actually have this one inactivated. So this can be used as a comment. Anyways, so if I now run this, it is invisible now. And what we can do now is that we're going to be seeing, we're going to have a good look at the HTML that we have created. So this actually produces the output that we want, but we are not really happy because we have talked about this earlier, and we have said that the HTML document should only contain the markup stuff, and it should not contain the styling content. But here we are seeing that almost within every single element that we have some bit of styling together, right? So the HTML is now intermingled with the styling. That is a problem. So if I want to, I can actually move all the styling content to the top. Now I'm going to show you how that is done, and this is going to be really important. So what we can do here is that in the head, we can actually have another style, element called style. And what we can do is we can put all the style that we had in the document on top. And the way we are going to be doing that is that here, for example, we have the body, and we had applied a particular style here. What we can do in this style, we can mention the name of the tag, and for example, we have the body, and we can actually put a curly braces like C, and here we can actually mention the style. So we can say that, okay, the font style that we want is going to be Arial. So we can actually copy this and paste this here. So if I just remove this now and run this, it would actually give me the same result. So what is happening here is that we are moving the style from the element into the top of the body in the head. And here, how we are mentioning this, we are mentioning the element that we want the style to be applied to inside the style tag, and we are mentioning the style code, similar to what we have done in the double quotation. So do you see how this is working?
Yes, sir.
This will change the entire body, right, sir?
Yeah. So basically what we have done here is the same thing that we are doing here, but we are moving the style from this one to here. So let me show you what I mean. What is the benefit of this? So here we have the H1 tag, and the H1 tag has two style statements. So how can we actually put this here? What are we going to write?
H1.
H1. And then curly braces. And here we have two statements. One is going to be color, blue, and we can separate this using the semicolon, similar to what we have done. So basically here we have in one line, but we can put this in the second line. And we can say that the text align is actually going to be centered. And we can remove this. Apply the H1 from here. So basically what we are doing is that we are moving all the style content from the particular elements, and we're putting them here. So the difference between having the style content here and here is that when we are doing this, we have to keep in mind that all the H1s that we are going to be applying, all the H1s that we're going to be having in the document will have this particular style. So for example, if I now introduce one other H1 element, it will also have the same styling attribute, unlike this one, right? So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And now let's talk about this one right here. So we have the div. So in the div, we are actually applying a bit of style. So we are saying that the text align is going to be center and the color is going to be gray. So how can we do this here?
Just by typing div, then curly brace.
Exactly. So you got it. We're going to be typing div, and then we're going to be putting these things right here. So let me cut this and paste it here. So the styling attribute that we had applied for the whole div for this, we're going to be putting this. Now there's a problem if I do this. If you think about it, are we going to use div here only, or there is a chance that we're also going to be use div somewhere else also?
Somewhere else also.
Also somewhere else, because div is such a common thing. We use it all the time. So if I say that, okay, the div is going to have a text align of center and the color is going to be gray, so all the divs that we're going to have in the HTML document will have the same styling attribute, and that is going to be a problem. So the way to distinguish between the different types of divs is to give this particular div a name. So the way we can do that is using a special attribute called class. So we can say that, okay, this div is named, let me give this a name of infos. So because this contains a lot of information, right? So we are saying that, okay, this div is actually called class, called infos. So the way we can actually name this using the attribute called class. So what will happen is that if I now have a div called class info, then only I would actually be applying this. So the way to actually select this particular class is either you can say that, okay, the attribute, you can mention attribute using the third bracket, and you can say that, okay, the class is going to be infos, and this will actually be applied. As you can see, this is actually applied. But there is an easier way of writing this. So if you're using third at styling element. But since we are using class, there is an easier way of doing this. We can say that, okay, dot info equals to this. And this will give us the same result. If you mention the class name, then you can select the class name by mentioning a dot in front of it. So let me give you another example so that it becomes clear to you. Inside this div, we have 3 span. They have the same styles. Do we use span for other purposes also?
Yes.
So is it a good idea to have a span with the margin of 10 pixel?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Can we write this span and margin of 10 pixel? What will happen then?
Every span element will have.
Every span. We have also a span here, right? So every other span will also have a space like this. So if I now remove this, let me also remove this one and also this one, and this will give you an idea of what is actually happening. So if I now refresh this, as you can see, they have the space, but they also get the space, because if you remember, this is the first time that we started using span. So they are also being applied here. So you tell me, what is the solution?
Using class.
Using class. So what name can we give to this particular span?
Date.
If I'm saying date, then I'm just trying to identify this one. But these are just what?
One info.
One info. So info. So the div was infos, and there is no actually right word. This is not a right word. There is nothing called informations. But let's use this. So we can say that the class, they all will have, it's called info. So what we can now do is that instead of writing span by selecting all the spans, we can actually specifically select these particular things. So how can we select these things?
Dot info.
Dot info. Exactly. You got this. So if I select now dot info, I would only select these particular spans, not these spans. And if you want to be more specific, what you can do is you can put a span in front of it. By saying if you can actually put an and notation, which means that all the spans that has a class info, they will be selected. It will give you the same output. So similarly, you can actually what can you write here?
div.info.
Div.info. So it's not really div.info. You are writing div and .info together. It does not mean that the info is part of the div or something, but it's saying that, okay, if first select all the divs and then select only the divs that have the color infos, class infos, that will be selected. So this will give you the same output. So it's a way of ANDing stuff, doing AND to the stuff. So all the elements that is a div and it has a color of infos, they will be selected. And the same is true for this one. If I write span infos, what will happen?
It will not be applied.
It will not be applied because what is it looking for here?
If that have info classes.
Span infos.
Yes.
But there is no span infos.
Excellent. So when I'm typing this, I'm saying that, okay, all the spans that have a class called infos will be selected. But we don't really have any span that has a class. Rather, we have a div. So if I want to be more specific, I can actually mention the element in front of it so that we can have it and. Okay. Now, so this is how the class actually works. And now let me give you some more interesting examples. So the other ways where we are using span is this. So in all these cases, what was the purpose of this span right here?
Add weight to it.
Yes, to actually normalize the font weight, right? So this was actually to make sure that this does not become bold. So we are using span here to make sure that this portion of the text has a normal font weight in contrast to being bold, right?
Yes,
you remember? Okay, so I want to move all the styles that we have because I can see that they are all very common. So I want to move all the style from here to the top. So can you tell me what is going to be the way to do this? Are we going to use span here?
We can use class.
Yes, we can use class and we can give it a class name that we want to have a normal text, right? So we can say that, okay, it will have a class name and the class name can be something like a normal text. But since this is a special case, since we have the span inside the h3 tag, and whenever we are encountering in this document span inside the h3, it has only one purpose: to make the content inside the span non-bold. What we can do is we can actually do this in a very smarter way. So let me show you what I mean. So what we can do here is that, let me first remove the styles, and we can say, I think I missed one. Here in this document, we are seeing that whenever we are putting a span inside an h3, whenever a span is a child of h3, the content should not be bold. This is what we were trying to do. And this is something that we can do this very easily in the CSS. We can say that, okay, if an h3's children is a span, then on the span, we can have a font weight of normal. You see what I did? I'm saying that if there is a span, which is a child of h3, then the span should have a font weight of normal. So if I now refresh this, the same thing will happen. Did you get it?
Can you repeat, sir?
Of course. This is the tough one. So in this document, we're noticing a pattern. We're seeing that every time we are actually putting a span inside an h3, we're actually trying to say that, okay, this is going to be a normal font. So instead of assigning a class to this, we can say that every time you encounter a span inside an h3, you put the font weight of normal. So the way we are selecting these spans who are actually inside the h3 is by using this. So if you're saying this, then what the CSS understand is that every span that has a parent of h3. Now this is also a span, but is it a parent of h3?
No, sir.
If you look at the date, so the date is actually a span, but what is its parent?
It's a div.
Div. So if I change it to h3, I will see that the content will actually not have the bold, because although we did not really apply bold here, but if you think about it, this one is actually strong. The H3 should have been strong, but since this is actually an H3 and we have a span inside, it will actually not be bold. But that's a different example. But the idea is that we are only selecting the spans who are inside the H3, and we are applying a style here. Did you get it?
Sir, can there be more child values here, like H3 child of span, then another child of something else?
Okay, so if you want to have more values, you can let's say, for example, let me give you something. Let's say that if there is a strong inside a span, then the strong will have a color of red. Okay, so if I want to have, let's say, strong span, if there is a strong inside a span, it will have a color of red. If I do this, all the strong values which are inside a span will have a color of red. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
So if you want to have more values, for example, if it can either be strong or emphasis. So if I refresh this, it will not be bold. So if you want to select the emphasis also, what you can do is you can use it using comma. So you can say, okay, the span inside the strong inside the span, and also the span emphasis inside the span. They will also have the red color. So you can do this using comma if you want to have multiple values, or you can obviously have it into the another line. You can write it like this. But I think this is getting too difficult for you today. I know this is a lot to take in for one class. Are you getting overwhelmed?
Yes, sir, kind of.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me quickly wrap up the content. We are not going to go any further than this.
আমাদের কোনো অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট থাকবে? এটা অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট দিলে মানে আমাদের টাস্ক একটা দিলে ভালো হয়, তাহলে প্র্যাকটিস
Yes,
হয়।
where I'm going to give you a task. You have done agenda 1, you have done agenda 3, so there is an agenda 2 somewhere. So I'm going to give you, and you have to do this. Okay. So let me finish what I was talking about regarding the selector, and then I'm going to talk about one more thing, which is going to be table, and then I'm going to give you the assignment for the next class. Okay. Can you hold for that one too, at least?
Yes, sir.
Can you have some bit of patience?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good. So we're almost at the end of the thing that I was talking about, which is going to be the selector. We're going to talk much more about this in the next class, inshallah. But this is all the things that I have to talk about. So let me quickly finish this. We have all the styles that are put up except for these OLs. So you tell me, how can we actually put these styles on the top? We have the OL styles, and this OL actually has a style of alpha, and this OL is actually has a style of Roman. So what shall we write in the style element? Yes. If I write OL and then I apply the list style type upper alpha, what will happen?
All the OLs will have upper alpha.
All the OLs will be upper alpha. But we want to distinguish between this OL and this OL. And we don't really have a pattern, because all the OLs are actually after the H3 and after the H3, so they don't really have a pattern. So we cannot actually apply those patterns here. So we would actually have to put a class here. So what do you think will be the class name for this one, for the letter? Let's say that is going to be letter. And also for this one, let's put a class called Roman. And if I use plural here, I would have to use plural here. So let's use letters and also Romans. So you tell me, how can we actually access the letters?
So dot well.
Dot letters.
Dot letters. Either you put OL and then dot letters. That would actually select all the OLs having the class letters, or you can actually use only letters, because we only have one class having the content letters, right? And we're going to be saying that, okay, list style type of this is going to be upper alpha.
Upper alpha.
And we have one other class, which is going to be the Roman.
Dot Romans.
Romans, yes. And the list style type of that one is going to be upper Roman.
Upper Roman.
And that should give us the same output. And we have one last inline style that we have right here is for the H3. And you tell me, how shall I? We have one last bit here. How can we put this on the top?
So we can give it a class of notes.
Do we need to give a class here?
So it's not necessary.
H3 use হয় না
করতে পারি
Okay, I think actually we have used H3 here. So if I
we can give it a class of blue, and
yeah,
then
since
all the elements having blue color, we can give that class.
Yeah. So what we can do is we can actually put a class, and we can say that okay, it's going to be a footer, and we can.
Sir, since we have only one line, does we need to make it more complicated? Like you can easily inline.
Yes, I am going to give you the answer within 30 seconds, inshallah. That's a very good point. That if I have only one style, shouldn't we just leave it there instead of making so much problem? So we have a footer, and we're going to be saying that okay, the style is going to be color. Can anyone answer this for me? That his question is that since we have only one style, why don't we just keep this style here?
Sir, আরো organize and search করতে easy হবে.
Just have a look at the HTML document now. The whole document now does not have any kind of styling information. You see, in the body there is no style information. So this was actually the whole purpose, that we want to have only the markings or the markups here, and we want to put all the style information in a separate document, which is going to be a CSS file. So in the next class, we're going to be seeing how we can actually put this thing outside the HTML file and into an CSS file. So this was the purpose of doing this. Did you understand the answer?
Yes, sir.
So what we want is that we don't want even a single bit of styling information in the HTML, because the purpose of the HTML is only to mark stuff, not style stuff, right? So this is something that we have done successfully here. So hopefully in the next class, we're going to be learning about some of the more stuff here, and I'm going to give you some reading assignment. So in this particular section, we have learned about different selectors, and we have seen the child selector. So if there's a span who is an immediate child of H3, we are going to be select this span. So this is something that we have seen. And let me ask you something. If I use an H3 instead of the footer, so all the H3s are going to change. So do you think that we are applying the style of H3 in both cases? Did you get the question?
No, sir.
The question is that, do you think that this style is being applied to H3 also?
Yes, sir.
This can be a common communication or misconception.
ওখানে তো স্প্যান নেই শুধু
ক্লাস থাকলে ওইটা স্যার ওইটাতে অ্যাপ্লাই হবে স্যার ক্লাস বা আইডি
My question is that, is this particular styling element is also being applied to the H3?
No, it's not, sir.
It is
It's only
not
being
applied.
inside H3.
Not
It's-
be applied.
It's only being applied to the span, right?
Yes, sir.
So we are saying that okay, if there is a span that is a child of H3, then the span only should have this attribute, not the H3. So let me just change that again.
যদি H3 তে যদি স্প্যান থাকে তখন এটা এক্সিকিউট হবে, তাই তো?
On which element, H3 or span?
So স্প্যানে এক্সিকিউট হবে আর কি।
Right. So in another section, someone was having a confusion that whether the H3 will also have this attribute. The answer is
No, sir.
the answer is no. It will only be applied to the final element. So this way is actually a relative thing. So for example, if I say that my brother came to the party, so did I come to the party?
No, sir.
No,
Not
my
necessary.
brother. So it's kind of like saying the span which is a children of H3 will have this style, not the H3 itself. So this is one confusion that we might have. So we can, yes,
স্যার এখানে যদি H3 স্প্যানটা না থাকতো আর এখানে যদি খালি H3 তে আমি স্টাইলিং করতাম, তাহলে কি H3 এর ভিতর যদি স্প্যান ইউজ করতাম ওইটা তো কি H3 তে যেটা স্টাইল করেছি ওটা অ্যাপ্লাই হতো?
can you rephrase again?
মানে স্যার যদি H3 চাইল্ড অফ স্প্যানটা যদি না থাকতো এখানে যদি আমি খালি H3 তে স্টাইলিং করতাম, তাহলে আমি যখন H3 এর ভিতরে স্প্যানিং ইউজ করতাম, ওটা কি পুরা H3 তে যে স্টাইলটা ইউজ করেছি ওটা অ্যাপ্লাই হতো?
Yes. So you know that some of the attributes are actually inherited. So if I applied some color to this, it would actually be inherited to the child also.
Yes.
Right? But this is something that we don't want. We want the H3 first part to have bold. Isn't it?
Yes.
So that's why we had separated this. So I know this is a lot to take in for one class. So let me finish the class with one last topic that we were talking about. And still we are behind of the other section, because in the other section we had talked about something else also. The one thing that I want to talk about at the end of the class is something called the table. So the way you can actually create a table, you have probably seen in the agenda 2 or 3, is that these are the things, and the way to actually create these things is to use a table. So let's say, for example, I want to create a table like this, and we're not going to have the contents like that. So what we can do is that if I want to create a table like this, and this is actually a bad example of table. If you think about a table, it will have a header, and it will have some bit of content, and then also some footer. So in order to have a table, what you can do is you have a table element, and inside the table element you have 3 different things. First one is T head, and the other one is T body, and then you have something called the T foot. So these are the 3 things. The T head will contain the header. So have you seen that the tables have a separate type of header? If you think of a table, the first row is actually highlighted because this is the header. It contains the title of the things, the ID, the name, the phone, address, like that, right? So they have a different font. Did you see?
Yes, sir.
Right? So these things are going to be mentioned here. And each of these lines, each of the rows of a table is going to be inside something called the TR. So if I want to have a line, I'm going to be mentioning the content of the line inside a TR or a table row. So let's say I want to have a table of like 3 columns. The first one is going to be a name. The second one is going to be age. The third one is going to be phone. So I want to have a phone diagram. So if I want to have 3 columns, I'm going to be mentioning about the columns into something called TH. So what we're going to be doing is like this. We have a TH. There's going to be 1 column. So it's going to be, say, name. And let me copy that for you. So, and the next column is going to be age. And the third one is going to be phone. So I have created 3 columns. So this is going to be about the head. And this is going to be the header. And inside the body, I'm going to have the actual data. So the data are going to be multiple rows definitely. So each of the rows are going to be created using the same pattern called the TR. And inside this, how many columns of data should be there?
So 3.
3, because we have created 3 columns here. But instead of using TH, we are going to be using something called the TD, which means table data. If you are using TH, it will have the content in bold. And if you use TD, it will have the normal font. So we would want the header to have the bold font, and we want the content of the table to have the normal font. So let's say we have Mr. A, which is going to be the name, and also the age is going to be maybe 22, and also the phone number. Sorry, phone number is going to be maybe 1234. So there's going to be 1 line of data. So we can have as many as data we want, and we can actually copy this, and we can have Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, and we can actually have this data. If I now refresh this, it would actually give me the table, and I'm sure this is not what you were expecting. You were expecting maybe a fancy table, and we can actually have a much more fancier table when we're applying a bit of styling elements to this as well. And this is going to be your home assignment. So if you have a look at the agenda 2, what you can do, and what you will see is that it contains a table. So I want you to create this agenda 2 for me. And what you're going to be doing is that you're going to be looking up about the table formatting things and how you can actually put the background of this particular row, and how you can actually have the table borders, and you can have the light gray background here, and how you can have the new lines here. So there's something that you will have to do in the next class. So this is going to be your home assignment. Do you understand the task?
Yes, sir.
So you're going to find out on your own that what are the styling attributes that you can apply on the table. Okay. So in the next class, we are going to be seeing your submission, and then also we're going to be learning a lot more about some other stuff as well. So we could not continue the things because we had some other tasks from the previous class that we have to continue. So let me talk about the other things in the next class, inshallah. And do you have a question?
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry?
স্যার আমার একটু ওই যে এজেন্ডা 3 টা একটু দেখাইতে হবে।
You want to show the agenda 3?
জি জি।
Okay, no problem. What we can do is I can stay after the class and I can see your agenda. Okay, I have some other things to show you. Is that okay?
In home assignment, we just have to create the table.
You create the whole agenda. Hopefully by now you know how to create the rest of the things.
Yes, sir.
This is actually common, right?
Yes, sir. It's common.
Okay. This is not really the home assignment. This is just a thing that you do for practice. Okay, home practice you can call it.
Okay, sir.
And how do you create the new line here?
The BR tag.
Using the BR tag. Okay. So I have some reading assignment for you as well. So if you have a look here, we have done the agenda 3. We have tried to do agenda 3 here, and I'm going to be giving you some of the PowerPoints that we have right here, and we're going to be seeing some of the things. For example, we have the HTML elements. I'm giving you these PowerPoints or the PDFs, and you're going to be going through the contents. So some of the things that I have covered and some of the things I have not get a chance to cover. For example, I have talked about the block level and the inline elements in the class. Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
So do you know the difference? What is the block level and what is the inline?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Block will take the whole.
যতটুকু লাইন অতটুকুই নেবে আর
Right.
ব্লক
So the inline. Correct. So the inline will take only the content width, and the block level will take the whole browser width. So this is a very important difference. And in the next class, we're going to be seeing how we can actually change that. And we have talked about the empty elements, but we did not really mention it. So we have seen that there are elements which do not have a closing tag. So if you start a paragraph, you have to end it. But if you are using a BR, you don't really have to close it. And if you are using a horizontal rule, you don't really have to close it. But so what you can do is you can actually omit this slash here, and you can just write BR. There was one other empty element that we had seen other than the BR and the HR. Do you remember? At the beginning of the class, we had seen one other empty element which does not need closing.
The meta.
Excellent. Meta. So in the head, we have seen that there is a meta tag that also does not need any kind of closing because the information is actually in the attribute. Very good. So the trailing slash is actually optional, and you can just write BR and the HR, similar to what we have done in the class. And this is something that we could not do in the class because of the overload of information that we have seen. And there are some other things that I could not talk about. So these are more or less the things that we would use in the HTML. So I have given you the basic things. We have not talked about the link, and we have talked about a lot in the formatting, and we have given you the table. And this is something, and also the graphics, something that we are going to be talking about in the next class, inshallah. So I want you to go through the slide, and I want you to try to understand the content of the slides. So I have also talked about the CSS selectors. So in this slide, you will find different CSS units. For example, we have for the padding, we have pixel, but we can actually use some other things as well. So here you will find some other contents as well. For example, you will see how to create comments and how you can actually put multiple properties, and also some other things. For example, you can see how we can actually mention multiple fonts here. So I want you to go through these contents and try to understand them as much as possible. Some of them are things we are going to be talking about in the next class, but the other things are going to be for your own study. So there are some other text styles as well. For example, we have talked about the justify or the center or the right, but there are other values as well. So you're going to find some of these properties here that you will find useful. For example, we have used this properly, right? So I want you to go through these things, and they are a useful reference for your study and everything. So I'm going to give you these PDFs, so you will study them and you will try to make the agenda too. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you face any problem, you can discuss in the class, and also you can also email me to if you have a particular problem that you are not being able to solve. So let me finish the class here today, and I thank you for joining in. I will see you in the next class, inshallah. And if you have a problem, you can stay. Yeah, I know. I'm really sorry. I was planning to give 2 breaks actually, but since we could not do a lot in the last class, I had to actually cover some of the content of the last class. That's why we actually got a bit tired. So I hope we're going to have some more breaks in the next class, inshallah. Okay.
So will the amount of content marks? Sir?
Yeah, yes. Did you say anything?
So will the task have any marks? Like, will we be graded on the home task?
I'm not. I was planning to do something like this, but I would rather not. So they are for your practice, right?
Okay, sir.
But if you do that, you will be able to have a better preparation in the city. Yes, yes, sir.
How will you submit the home assignment or?
Oh, this is not a home assignment actually. This is a practice. So you will show the code in the next class, similar to something we have done in today.
By screen sharing.
Yeah, by screen sharing.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yes. Yes.
Do we only have to use